consequently, and I am back here in the Phantom Zone. Welcome to the evil lair of 2020. That's right, I am here in General Zod's lair to bring you another great review, and it is going to be on the 2020 new film for January, The Grudge. And folks, I'm going to be honest with you here. Zod has biases. I wanted to give this a really high grade score and had super high expectations for this film to where I was conflicted and I couldn't make my review last night because I had to reflect on what my grade was going to be. But alas, I do this for you, so I had to be fair and partial with this film. So I'm going to get into the overview, the pros, the cons, whether or not I approve or disapprove in my rating system from 1 to 10, 1 being a pile of garbage and 10 being the greatest thing ever made by your earth. So let's just dive into it. This movie is about the grudge, or joan, as they say in Japan, which means hatred or curse. And this is a Japanese legend and or myth, and I am fond of the Japanese culture, and particularly how they tell their ghost stories. Unlike the ghosts of America, the Grudge is about how when someone dies in a violent way, instead of there being physical ghosts being left, there are apparitions that are left, but they're more imprints of the violence that occurred. It's like a parasite. It attaches itself in whatever space the person died, and whoever goes into that space is infected, like a virus. And even if you leave the area, you bring the curse with you until it consumes you and kills you in a very violent and horrific way. Or you enact what happened to the people who died. So, as you can tell, this has the potential to be a very intriguing, in-depth, interwoven story. Unfortunately, the 2019 version does not capture the magic that the 2000 and 2008 remake or the original 2000 Japanese versions did, and I'll go into my reasons why. But my pros are that I did like the new direction that it went into. I liked that there was a callback to the original, and it explained the reasons of how it was from Japan here in America. And I do like the interconnected storytelling, which is what The Grudge does is there's one central tale, but they go back and forth between periods of time, and all of them connect to the central story. So you'll have an event in 2001, 2005, 2008, and then 2020. And it starts out with a detective who finds this lady and goes to this house and inadvertently contracts the grudge. And then as she's going through, they're explaining the stories of each of the victims that preceded her finding the house. Now, that was all good. The acting was pretty stellar. I'm not gonna lie. The actors did a good job and was serviceable for a horror film. It being R was a benefit. There was some pretty unsettling scenes in this film. One scene in particular that was very gruesome, and just the gravity of the dynamic between the two of them, it was really, really unsettling. But I have to do my cons, and my cons are this. At points, the film is boring, which you never want in a horror movie. There were some parts where literally I had 2 cups of coffee and I was nodding to stay awake. And this wants to have a sophisticated story. The problem is the story is simplistic in nature, and they should have went more with being scary, and I hate to endorse this, but doing more jump scares, because this film was the film that launched everything you saw. This was before Paranormal Activity. This was before the Conjuring universe. This, I feel, is what this and The Ring modeled what would come later with The Conjuring and with all the other films that preceded it. Took a lot of cues, and they actually improved upon this. And someone said to me that this style of horror is out of date for the year we're in, and watching this film, I feel like sadly that's the case. What made this scary when I was a kid and when this was first brought to America made it scary because no one had ever seen it. The problem is we've had like 8 films that have done this premise and have done it far better. And that's my struggle, because I think nostalgically I wanted this film to be good, but if I'm being objective for you guys, it's not very good in the way it tries to deliver its tale. The director is very conflicted with wanting to tell a updated version of this while trying to throw nods in from the original and connect the two. And it does connect, but very thinly. Also, my big con is I do not like the fact I liked the new Grudge creature things, but I thought that the Japanese ones were far more scary. These were very generic, almost like the nun type creatures, as opposed to Kayako was iconic because she was just scary and sympathetic, and there was a lot of different beats that her character hit. These characters were very flat, and I didn't understand the motives except for she went crazy. And it's a shame, because what made Kayako such an iconic, and still to this day an iconic ghostly figure, is the pain and the sadness of the events and being trapped as this figure. You really feel for this creature when you find out what the story is, and by the end I didn't feel for this new entity, because it didn't have weight to the delivery. Like, they all did their jobs good, but there was no impact where you get to the ending and you go, wow, that's messed up. It wasn't there. There wasn't enough weight to carry the film to make you care about the creature. So in the end, it's just another creature killing people. And that's not what The Grudge is. The main villain of The Grudge, the main girl, was trapped in a situation with an abusive husband, and she dated an American. The husband went crazy, kills everyone in the house, and you feel the sadness from the character. And when you find out the backstory, you really feel bad for her character, because she was cursed for the deeds of somebody else, for someone else's jealousy, is the reason why her rage forever haunts the house, because she was swept up into a bad situation, and the guy was already abusing her before the events of the night that takes place. So there was a lot of setup there that made you sympathetic. This character just caught an infection and kills everyone, and it doesn't have the same weight, unfortunately. And so, getting to the end, what are my thoughts? Unfortunately, Zod does not approve. I wanted to. And I'll say there are things in this film to like, but not a lot to stay invested to even view this again. And The Grudge 2, Ju-on 2, I've watched multiple times. Even The Grudge 3, which went straight to DVD, I've watched that several times. I've watched Ju-on Black and White and The Grudge versus The Ring. Yes, that happened. That was a thing. And actually, it was pretty good. It was made in Japan. But unfortunately, this doesn't have any of the charm or the nuance or the depth of storytelling that the originals did. And that's unfortunate, because this could have been Sam Raimi and Robert Tappert are one of my favorite directors, and I feel like they didn't bring their A game, which is a shame, because Sam Raimi was in the 2008 remake, and he was quite good. But I felt like they missed the point of what the franchise was, and maybe they thought it wouldn't translate well. And this is a trap that a lot of remakes fall into, or reboots, is the fact that they deviate so far from the source because they have little faith in the premise. especially if you give the kids something when they've seen thousands of Conjurings and things like that. To give them something old could be new because no one's ever seen it. I think it should have been a much more based in Japan kind of a remake instead of Americanized. So my scale of 1 to 10, I'm not going to say it's like Cats where you can't understand the story. And I'm not going to say that it's Charlie's Angels or Black Christmas. It is far above and beyond. There's no identity politics in this, thankfully. But I can't rate it high just based on those merits. I'm going to have to give this one a 6, unfortunately, because it misses the point of what the story is. And while the storytelling does come together at the end, I feel like they didn't go in depth enough with the main character. And that's a huge flaw. If you are selling a ghost or an entity, you've got to give them a backstory that the audience can connect with. And if they can't understand the motives of the creature that's doing these acts, then they don't care by the end of the film. And that's pretty much what happens. You're like, cool, people die very violently, and it's pretty unsettling, some scenes, but at the end of the day, it's just more stuff thrown on screen and no attention to detail, and horror movies have done it better. So that's the end of this review. I give The Grudge a 6, and Zod does not approve. I'm sorry, unfortunately, if you are intrigued and you do want to see a movie that has some unsettling themes and whatnot in it, I'd wait for this to come out. Not even on DVD. Honestly, this is a watch once on HBO and then never think about it again. So January starting off strong, as always. So thank you, everybody. And if you're new to the channel and you liked the video, please hit the like button. And even more important, if you liked me, hit the subscribe button. And as always, for 2020, remember my one and only rule here in the fandom zone: Neo before General Zod.